Isn't it funny how sometimes we will allow rain or sunshine to dictate our day? I don't know why I thought about that, but I just thought about that a minute ago. And sometimes it's okay. Sunshiny day, we get started off right, sets the tone. Sometimes, though, on a Sunday morning, it's rainy and dingy, and that should never set the tone for a Sunday morning. When we're able to come together as a body of believers, a family, to come and to worship a God that saved us and loved us unconditionally. So it's good to be here. And even maybe with that own thought, God was even speaking to me to make sure I know and remember, hey, before you get up there, this is not a dingy day. It is a rainy day. It's not a dingy day. So maybe that was just for me. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Thought about what I wanted to do, and I actually was in Ephesians, and then thought about maybe going towards more of a Thanksgiving, but we'll talk about that tonight. And I really thought and prayed through it, and I have a short time with you, so I wanted to make sure that I honored God, and instead of going with just the celebrations of Thanksgiving, really ask Him what He would want me to do. And here I am, Ecclesiastes chapter 2, Pastor. Interesting. The title is Living for More. And most of y'all know the story of Solomon. Most of y'all know about the book of Ecclesiastes. And I'm not going to read chapter 1. We're going to be in chapter 2, 1 through 11. Chapter 1 and chapter 2 are very similar. It is basically, it starts off, vanity, vanity, all is vanity, which basically means everything is meaningless. What is life really about? And he goes on in chapter 1 and he says, look, I've done things, I've seen things. When it's all said and done, what is life about? And it's interesting, he wrote this book, Solomon, at the end of his life. And I can see him looking out at everything, sitting in his easy chair, wondering, is this what life's all about? And it's interesting because life hasn't changed much from then. And the enemy's tactics hasn't changed much either. And the way we fall for these tactics hasn't changed much from Solomon's day as well. Let me read to you Ecclesiastes chapter 2, 1 through 11. I'm going to do this message a little bit differently. I'm going to read, and then I'm just going to pick a few things, some things that I jotted down as I read this, and I wanted to share with you. So I'm not going to do verse by verse. I just wanted to read this, really have a good understanding of what Solomon was actually seeing in his head as he was writing this, and then some things that I want to point out. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guided me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during these few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parked and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water the groves, to flourish the trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasures of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delight of man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. And all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart's no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward of my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hand had done, what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. That's quite an indictment in his life. As a matter of fact, chapter 1 is very, very similar. So you have 2 chapters of the wisest man that ever lived, after kind of telling his life story, after going after every bit of pleasure, everything his eye wanted, everything that needed to be built, he built. After acquiring all the riches, all the gold and silver, having everything, he still said, when it was all said and done, it's all meaningless. It's all meaningless. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about that today. The wisest man that ever lived wanted to know this, okay? And I also believe that we ask the same question, and I know the world asks this same question. And the question is this: why am I not happy? That's what he's asking. Why am I not happy? It doesn't make sense. 2 plus 2 equals 4. I wanted everything that my eyes could ever want. I have so much gold and so much silver that I will never need. I've got more than any other king before me. Our kingdom is flourishing. I have so much wisdom. People are coming to get counsel from me. I have influence. If I have everything that I can imagine I'd ever want, why am I not happy? It's the million-dollar question that everybody's still asking. Why am I not happy? Why was Solomon not happy? After it was all said and done, why was he in this state, looking back, thinking everything was meaningless, everything that I achieved, everything that I had done was for naught? And the question today, what he was trying to say is, why am I not happy? There are people today following that same path as Solomon. There are people today trying to achieve, trying to get success, because that's what we judge each other right by. That's what we judge each other by. Hey, one of the first things we ask is, hey, so what do you do for a living? We really want to know so we can assess who they are. We can assess a little bit about them. We can assess, okay, if he does this, that means my job is a little bit better. That means I can stand a little bit taller than that individual. Or if his job is a little bit better than mine, then I've got to figure out what I need to do to rise to his level or above, because I don't want to stay beneath. That's what we judge ourselves. We even judge ourselves by that. We will judge ourselves by the size of our house, by the style of our car, by how much money we have in the bank account. Where did that come from? I'll leave you with that thought. The wisest man that ever lived wanted to know, why am I not happy? How about this one? I have everything. I have everything and have all that this world has to offer. Why do I feel so empty? Why am I empty? We know today that that people are not happy. And by the way, Christmas is coming, Thanksgiving is coming. Happiness comes and happiness goes, but joy lasts forever. Happiness today comes from happenings. We're happy for that split moment, but it's not sustainable. Why do I feel so empty? There are people today that live an empty life. There's nothing going on. They're looking for the next moment. Are you looking for the next moment to satisfy you, to fulfill you? Where's fulfillment? Let me ask you this. If people today are living, running around empty and really not happy with life, then is there any such thing as fulfillment? Are people fulfilled? Now, let's go back to happy. Let's go back at being empty. People today will look at it, and if you're not careful, you will try to find that happiness, that fulfillment in a wife. You will try to find that happiness and fulfillment in a husband. You'll try to find that happiness, that fulfillment in a bank account, in a house. But when that falls apart, where do you go? You know, a lot of times we will put so much pressure on our spouse. Let's kind of go there right now. Because in the home, we know that the church will go with the home with the church, and the church is falling apart, the home's falling apart, the kids are falling apart. And the enemy has a strategic plan to take away the home, the marriage, to destroy the marriage. But, you know, we sabotage our own marriage. You know why? Because we will go around and we're not really happy. We're not really sure why. We're not really fulfilled. We're actually living in emptiness. And we'll blame the closest one to us. We'll blame our wife for not fulfilling me or not making me happy, because we're not going to blame ourselves. So we're going to blame somebody else. And it usually goes and it's directed to your spouse, which the enemy is in the background setting all this up because he wants to destroy the family. Again, because the family is the makeup of the church. But we're not asking ourselves the real questions. Why am I not happy? Why do I feel so empty? With all that I have achieved, where is the fulfillment? These same questions that we ask ourselves today are the same questions that Solomon was talking about then. He's asking this: what is life truly about? What is life? What is life? If I asked you, or you had to come up here and stand before everybody else, and I would ask you, what is life about? What would you say? What would you say? Let me ask you this. If I were to ask you, are you happy? Do you have that joy? Do you have that peace? And I didn't want just a glossed over answer, but an answer that you really dig deep in. Because a lot of times we will say, oh yeah, I'm happy, but our life doesn't show it. It doesn't show that we're really happy. We can be happy in moments and spots, but for the long haul, for the duration, do people see it? Do they see that harmony inside your soul? You can say something, but people can feel it and they can observe it. Are you empty? With all that I have achieved, why is there no fulfillment? First of all, we were created to be in community. The question is, why do I feel empty? A lot of times we live an isolated life. Do you know that we were created to live in community with God? To have that peace and that joy, and to love and to be loved? There are people today that do not feel loved. There are people today that they feel isolated. They feel there is no fulfillment, there is no love, and all these things that they're trying to purchase to have that is not working. So if that's one of the biggest questions going on, and one of the biggest questions is, what is life truly about? And I know, because even in the university that I work in, you have these 21, 22, 23-year-olds. They're trying to figure out, what is joy? What is happiness? How can I achieve success? What is life truly about? So I'm engaging these young people, knowing that they're going to grow up, and if they don't find the answers young, those questions are still going to be there when they get older. As a matter of fact, those questions are still going to be hitting, but hitting harder. You know why? Because at the age that they are, at 21, 22, and 23, there's no major responsibilities coming against them. But as we get older and the responsibilities come and all these expectations that we have for ourselves and other people have for us start coming together and slamming against each other. And of course, you have the enemy continually, without hesitation, coming after you over and over, day after day, moment by moment. If we don't have these questions answered in our lives, we can fall prey as well. So, what is life truly about? We know John 10:10 says this, the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But Jesus says, I come to give you life, that you may have it more abundantly. So, as I'm going along, I want you to begin to really ask yourself, what's life truly about? What is your life as a Christian, when it's all deduced downward? What is life truly, truly about? The world today is asking these same questions. They are not going to find it on their own. They're not. They're going to continue to ask the same questions to themselves and to each other without answer, because there's only one answer. Anybody know that answer? Jesus. It's Jesus. Jesus is the answer. He's the greatest gift that one can ever know. His name is Jesus Christ, and He's the only one that can bring happiness. He's the only one that can bring fulfillment. He's the only one that can bring joy. He's the only one that can help in this world. He's the only one that can fill that void that people have today, and they don't even know it. We are the newsboys. We are the deliverer. It is up to us to come and to share. And we share that by what we say and what they see. The problem is that inside of God's church, we still have these same questions. We still have the questions of, why am I not happy? We have the question of, why do I feel empty? We have where is the fulfillment? If God's people don't have those answers, they're not living within those answers, how are we going to ever help a lost and dying world that's looking for answers? They don't even know that they have a question, and we're supposed to deliver an answer when it's not even real in our own life. Is it real in your life? Do you live with joy? Are you one of these individuals that wake up on a cloudy Sunday, rainy day, and says, this day is going to be the pits? Because we're thinking about other things. We're not even thinking about the time that we can have with our brothers and sisters and worshiping God and learning and growing and maturing together and celebrating and allowing that harmony just to come together and just stew with one another. I remember a basketball player by the name of Dennis Rodman. Yep, I hear y'all snickering. So you know him too. I remember watching old Dennis. This was right after those glory years. He was a basketball player in the NBA, and toward the end of his career, he played with Michael Jordan, and they won all those championships, and he played with the Pistons, the Bad Boys before that, and he had a really great, close to a Hall of Famer, maybe a Hall of Famer year. But he was also one of these crazy, charismatic guys who colored his hair, had tattoos everywhere. And I remember seeing him, he's always doing the outrageous. And I saw him one time, he was doing a book signing in a wedding dress. Makeup, the whole 9 yards. He was the type of guy that he was the life of the party. He had girls on every side. He had money to burn and was just flinging it out the window. And he wanted everybody to know and to see. And everybody knew who Dennis Rodman was. And it's even more so because of the type of character that he developed upon himself. Even more so than his NBA career. That kind of got it started, but he kind of went to that next level, and he was his own character. And everybody knew Dennis Rodman was wild and crazy and the life of the party. And I remember watching an interview, and I'll never, ever, ever forget it. Because this time, Dennis Rodman was different. And the guy was asking some pointed questions. And he was quiet, and he was giving real answers, and it wasn't this crazy Dennis. It wasn't, I'm just going to try to get a rise out of him. And I remember after all these questions, and Dennis Rodman, with glossed over eyes and even a tear, because they started talking about his family, they started talking about his daughter, and what he wanted to leave as a legacy for his daughter. And man, it just got real thick. And he asked the guy that was interviewing after all these questions, he's like, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." I mean, I'm watching, this is on TV. He said, what's life all about? Let me ask you this, what is life really about? And I think he forgot that the camera's on. He was just talking to another guy. All these things were stirred up in these questions because they weren't the normal questions. He actually kind of lived out that life of being crazy Dennis. Now he had children, and he realized that all these things, there was no fulfillment in all his money. There was no fulfillment in just his rings alone. There was no fulfillment in going to the parties and having these girls and having all these escapades. And he asked, what is life really about? And the guy just kind of took a step back, and he really just kind of fumbled around, and Dennis never got an answer. And I remember thinking, man, if I could go through that screen, I'd quote one verse, Matthew 16:25. What profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? That same question that was going through Dennis and Rodman's mind was also going through Solomon's mind. And that same question goes through people in this community's mind every single day when they get up early in the morning to work 10 hours a day, to make enough money just to pay bills and just to make it to the next day so that you can do it all over again and again and again and again and again. Just to make it to the next week, just to make it to the next month, just to make it to the next year, just to make it to the next 10 years, just to make it to our kids can graduate. And before you know it, life is over. And you ask yourself those same questions that have never been answered. Who's going to answer these questions to these individuals? 9 times out of 10, you're never going to be given these questions. But it doesn't mean you can't give these answers. You understand what I'm saying? Most people are not going to ask you these questions. They're not, because it's a facade, it's a cover-up, and we put makeup on our lives to cover up and to make it seem like everything's okay. But it's not. Why? Because this world belongs to the enemy. And if you don't belong to Jesus, then you belong to this world that belongs to the enemy. And there is no possible way for true fulfillment. I don't think I need to elaborate other than turn on the news. It's not just news anymore, it's bad news. Go to the stars. Go to Britney Spears. Go to all these individuals. And look, I'm not one of these guys that's going to bash anybody. But you can look at their lives. Do I feel sorry? Yeah, I feel sorry. I'm not ever going to be one of these preachers that's going to bash these people. They're looking for the same thing that Solomon was looking for. They're looking for peace. They're looking for joy. They're looking for happiness. And they're doing the same thing that Solomon did. And they're building these big houses. They got all this money. They got all these things. But these stars, they don't have any peace either. The Donald Trumps of the world that try to gain success and wealth and money, but yet they're getting divorced. And yet they're not happy and they're not fulfilled in life either. There was a guy by the name of Howard Hughes. And at that time, he was like the billionaire of his era, years and years and years ago. I'm sure you know. And they said, when's enough enough? He said, they said, how much is enough? You know what he said? just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. That's the way we live our lives, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. You can never be fulfilled when you have that mindset. The world lives for pleasure, possessions, popularity, and prestige. That's what they're after. That's what they're gaining. That's what they're seeking for. They're seeking for selfish gratifications to please self. I'm going to make a little turn, okay? Because I've been building my case. The enemy has built this image of pleasure, of peace, and of happiness. And he has been selling it for a long, long, long time. And he sold it to Solomon. He even tried to sell it to Jesus. Do you know that? Matthew 4, 8 and 9. Again, the devil took him. This is when the devil was trying to get Jesus to worship him. And one of his strategies of the three. The devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdom of the world and its splendor. And all this I give you, he said, if you bow down and worship me. And if you look at the next verse, he says, look, I only worship and serve God. God alone is to be worshiped and served. If the enemy is going to use that tactic to sell Jesus on pleasures and wealth and kingdom, all this to gratify self, to make you feel fulfilled in yourself and all the pleasures that one can have, if he's going to even do that to Jesus, he's going to do it to you. You see, he used one of the main things in his arsenal, and that's to bring out that pride, that selfish, let me give you. Even Jesus had to endure that attack. He has been doing this since the beginning of time, and it's worked over and over and over and over and over again. And self, the pleasures of self, steals meaning. It steals fulfillment because the pleasures of self does not bring anything substantial or merit in your life. Jesus was not about being selfish. He was about being selfless. That's why he came down and he served mankind by coming and dying on the cross. He served people by coming and performing miracles, loving the unlovable. He wanted to be that observation for us to see, to live, and to be, and to know that serving self never amounts to anything. It is a facade that does not work. And when it was all said and done, Solomon finally understood it. So much so he wanted to write a book about it. And the topic sentence, the title, lasted for 2 chapters. 2 chapters. The wisest man that ever lived. So my question to you is this. What are you living for? What are you living for? Now, let me take a step back. Am I saying it's wrong to work hard, to have a nice house, to have a nice car, to put away some money for a savings account, put away some money to help? Nope, not at all. I'm doing it. I was able to help my son, who just got married, his girlfriend, his wife now, his wife's car just blew up. Now they have one. And because they're 21, they've got no credit. They got a little bit of money in the savings account that they don't want to spend on a down payment. So mom and dad kind of stepped in and were kind of helping out and figuring out, okay, well, we can help, and we can actually help him with a down payment because he's got no credit. His interest is going to be 9 or 10%. We don't necessarily want to co-sign because we want him to kind of get that working. but his payment's going to be $270. What are we going to do? You know what we did? We're like, okay, we're just going to give you our Prius. And we gave him our car. And I told Pam, seeing their face when we said, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to give you our Prius. And it was funny because they both just started laughing. They just started laughing. And it was a laughter that came from just stress, just, man, thanks, Dad. I could see it in one blink, one moment. As he looked at me, as we locked arms, there was a thank you, Dad, that I'll never forget. Why was I able to do that? Because I've been wise with my finances, with our bills. In order to do that, to help family, to help students, to help others in need, so that my family can be a blessing to others and to demonstrate the love of selflessness rather than selfishness. That is being fulfilled. There is a level of helping others in their hour of need that cannot be defined. That is meaning to help and to serve others and to give your life away and to give your finances away. What are you living for? What are you living for? Solomon, the wisest man, the richest man, the one who built more, the one who acquired more, had all the wisdom, was asking himself, what did I live for? I lived for this. I lived for a picture. I lived for a number, a weight of gold. I lived for that structure. I spent all my resources and the main resources, my time, that I don't get back for a building, for a number that they can come back to me and say, this is how much you have in your bank. This is how much you have in your bank. This is how much you have in your bank. What does that do? And he's writing this. And I believe as he's writing this, there's tears rolling down his eyes thinking, my life was spent on this. It's all vanity. It's all meaningless. What am I living for? What are you living for? Because you're here today, you don't have to ask that question when life's over, because we still have time. We've got time. What are you living for? How about this one? Let's go back to the church. What is this church living for? What you're living for, the answer that you give is going to dictate the answer for this church. If I ask, what are you living for? And everybody in this church has all these other reasons, outside of God's reasons, more of a selfish reason rather than a selfless reason, more of a seek a pleasurable reason rather than a church reason, then I'm going to ask, then what is this church here for? What are you trying to bring a new pastor for? And by the way, if you move towards living for God and His ways and obedience and His purposes, you're going to find meaning, you're going to find joy, you're going to find peace, you're going to find fulfillment. And there won't be any emptiness in your life. Because what God brings is real. It's tangible. And it's not fake. It's the real stuff. So you have to ask yourself, and as a matter of fact, I hate to say it, but you have to ask yourself every day. Because we can get the answer right today and get it wrong again tomorrow. What are you living for? I've said it before. God is not on the list of priorities. He is the priority. But what we have to wrestle with is to understand if our priority is God and God alone, and if what we're living for is Jesus, we have to wrestle with the mindset that we've been taught by the world all these years, where they say it's two things: to acquire and for pleasure. And of course, when it is acquired, that's all the stuff that we get to use to dictate how successful we are. We have to wrestle against what the world has taught us. And you say, well, the world's not they teach us when we watch the movies, when we read the books, when all these things. It's just a part of life. You can't run from it. You can't escape it. The only way that you can deny it is to put something else in its place. And say, no, that's what my life is not about that. It's about this. But if you just say my life's not about that and you don't fill it with something else, the world's going to fill it for you. So, what are you living for? What are you living for? What's your purpose? Why are you living? You know, who's the author and the giver of life? God is. God and God alone. You're still living. You're still here on this earth. You're here in this community. You're here in this church. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? What's your purpose in your family? What's your purpose in your marriage? What's your purpose? If I'm going to be living and God is allowing me to live, how am I going to benefit His kingdom? How am I going to benefit His ministry? How am I going to benefit this church as you guys enter into a whole new era, a whole new beginning? If this is done right, as I said before, this is a good time for a shake-up, a refocus, a reevaluation, a time to take a step back, re-engage, refocus, repurpose, and be a part of this next new level, this next generation of this church, to be a foundation in it, and to give, not just to get. All these things I'm telling you, that's real life. That's real fulfillment. That's real joy. That's real happiness, is to engage in where God is working and to be a part of His business, like Jesus said. Is that you? What are you living for? What is your purpose? Let me ask you this real quick. What are your goals? Do you have any goals? What are your goals? It's been said, if you aim for nothing, you're bound to hit it every time. What are you aiming for? If you're not aiming for anything, if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any purposes, then you're just kind of wandering through life. And usually people who wander through life are mediocre. They're mediocre. They're average. I don't want to give God average. I don't want to be average. I want to give God my best. I want to give the Lord my best. I want to give my family. I want to give my son. I want to give my wife. I want to give my students my best. Every day. Every moment. And I can't do that by myself. But if I push God out for selfish reasons and look another way and don't have those goals in front of me that I'm trying to achieve for Him, and I'm not focused, and I've lost my purpose, I'm aimless and will probably achieve nothing. What have you achieved for God's kingdom? How about this? You may give me an answer that was yesteryear. What are you doing now? How about this? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do tomorrow for this church? What are you going to do tomorrow for this community? What are you going to do tomorrow to building this family of believers? How about this one? What is your legacy? It means this. What are you leaving behind? What are you leaving behind? Solomon was able to say, I'm leaving this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And then he looked at it and like, it's meaningless. It's a nice building that people look at and say, oh, that's cool, and then walk away. What are you leaving behind? To me, what is meaningful and what is purposeful and what I'm living for is to give my life away for the benefit of others. What is my legacy? My legacy is this, that I may have pointed people to Christ. My legacy, prayerfully, because I'm still working on it, is that I can be a smile to someone who's having a bad day. That I can be a little bit of wisdom to somebody who is confused. My legacy is to be able to speak the words of life, to live the scriptures out, not just quote it, but live it. To be a sunshine on a rainy day. To be hope in a hopeless situation. To care for somebody in need. To give a car to a son that needs it badly. That's fulfillment. True fulfillment brings peace, brings joy. God wants us to live in joy because true joy and true peace radiates and cannot be denied. And people are attracted to it. They are attracted to it. People today see the same face that they give out. How's your marriage? It's okay. How's your marriage? She lets me out every once in a while. I hear that over and over, and I'll be honest with you, it just makes me sick. How's your marriage? How's the church? People don't ask me about my marriage anymore because they know. They know by the way I live. They know by the words that come out of my mouth. They don't ask me if I'm a Christian. If they're around me very long, they don't ask me if I'm a Christian because they watch how I behave. They watch how I respond. They watch the kindness and the love that I distribute. And guess what? It's because I have purpose in my everyday. It's because I have a goal that I try to achieve every day. And those things that I just told you, those are my goals and those are my purposes. My goal is to honor God with my life, period. To honor Him. And I have learned that when you honor God, you bring harmony within your life. Very few people today live in harmony. What are you leaving behind? What's your purpose? What are you living for? Who are you honoring? Yourself or God? Ephesians 12, 13 and 14, and some of y'all know where I'm going with this. After he wrote the book, this is how he closed the book. He wrote the book, 2 chapters of just confusing dialogue, asking himself, man, everything is meaningless. All the stuff I did, just looking back, shaking his head. 2 chapters full, and at the end, he ended it with 2 verses. The wisest thing that he ever said was this. Now all has been heard. There is the conclusion of the matter. This is the conclusion. This is it. Fear God and keep His commandments. For this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or whether it is evil. After all that he had went through, after all his successes, after all his achievements, after all that money, after all that fame, after all that prestige, after all of it, fear God and keep his commandments. Those two things is the answer to happiness, to fulfillment, to running from emptiness, to understanding what life is all about, to knowing your purpose, and living out your legacy. You're leaving your legacy now. What are you leaving behind? Let's pray. Lord, right now we just want to thank you for scriptures that we have that we can read without fear of being thrown in prison, beaten, or killed, as it is in most countries. And Lord, we thank you for that. We thank you that we can come together as a body of believers to learn and to grow from a man who spent his whole life finding out that every decision that he made was a mistake. Understanding and learning that the enemy has used that against him and has used that throughout the ages and still using it today to put our eyes on self and to take it off of Christ. But thank you, Lord, that we have the books of the Bible to learn and to grow. But more importantly, Lord, help us to actually take what it is that was written and allow it to change our lives. Not just to be words on the paper that we read, smile, and go back the way we were. But I just pray, Lord, that these pictures that we have seen and this story that Solomon told about his life, that every single one of us, definitely including myself, can run from that. And Lord, help us to know and to understand and to have strength to realize that we have to run from that every day because the enemy doesn't stop. Lord, give us the strength and give us the knowledge and give us the wisdom, Lord, to say yes to you. I just pray right now during this time that if anybody does not truly know you as Christ and that has been living a lie and living a life of selfishness and have just realized that they are empty with no fulfillment because they don't know you, I just pray, Lord, that they will find someone and receive you as Savior today. And for those of us, Lord, that are just dangling, living between the two ways of life, that we can finally decide to live the way that you have called us to live and to live a selfless life, to live a life of servitude to you and to understand and to know that's fulfillment. So I just pray, Lord, as we have a time of worship and reflection, that your church can come together and do something great and to leave a lasting legacy in this community of a church that served and loved without conditions and was able to bring meaning back again to the people of this place. So I hope that you're honored, and I hope that you enjoy this time that we got together to sit at your table. May our lives be honoring and pleasing to your sight. In Christ's name, Amen.